Warning: the Gel Blaster toy shown in this video could be mistaken for a real firearm. Do not take Gel Blasters into public spaces or it will likely be treated as real by authorities. Gel Blasters are classified as toys in Queensland regulations, however this may be different in your state or territory. Be sure to check your local laws before buying or ordering a Gel Blaster. Also, ensure you use adequate eye protection whenever using Gel Blasters. Stay safe everyone.
G'day boys and girls, so today I am going to continue with another Gel Blaster review. Few bits of criticism I got from the last review I did on the SKD AK-47 Gel Blaster, so I'm just going to change a couple of things around and hopefully try and make things flow a little bit better. One of those points was the video reviews are quite long, and that's intentional because I do like going into quite a bit of detail about what's actually on the blaster, how it looks, how it handles, chrono testing, accuracy, and I also intend to include gameplay footage with the blasters for any review I do. That way you can actually see it in the field being used. As a result of that, in order to make life easier for everyone, down in the description below you should be able to see some timestamps where I've got broken up into 4 sections, I believe it was. So one about having a close-up look at the blaster, one having a look at some of the technical specs and basic operations and how to do certain things, nothing special, just in case you are completely new to Gel Blasters and you weren't familiar with their operation. There's third section going into the chrono testing and accuracy testing, where I'll try and do any specific settings for the blaster, which will be very much relevant with the one I'm going to look at today. And also the last section will be the gameplay, and then final thoughts after that, and whether or not I recommend it's worth paying the money for it. So moving on without any further delay, today we're looking at the SKD M4SS Gel Blaster rifle. So the SKD M4SS Gel Blaster rifle has quite a bit of hype and reputation about it at the moment for a few reasons. There are a lot of things on this blaster which are a fairly decent step up in quality compared to what they had been previously, even at the start of the year or late last year. That's being in mind, they're not perfect like anything. It is still just a toy, and you need to keep this in mind when you do look at it, but for what it is, it's actually pretty good. So what we'll do, we'll have a quick look at it for the actual close-ups. So starting with the end of the blaster, as you can kind of see just there, and you might be able to tell as you look all the way down the length of it, it's all made out of a actual nylon material. This isn't a plastic blaster like pretty much every single one before it. The entire thing is made of nylon. The only exceptions being the internal components in the gearbox, and the barrel, the inner barrel, is actually an alloy barrel, which is quite a nice addition. But when we do look at the front end of the blaster, as you can see, there is a sling attachment point here. Keep in mind this is plastic, so I wouldn't go trusting this too much. There's not a lot you can do about that, but there it is. On the end of the barrel, on the end of the outer barrel, sorry, you will notice that there is not a lot there. Now there is a flash hider that comes with it standard, and that just slots on there. Now this one in particular only just sits on there and doesn't have too much reliability on sticking on. It seems to be holding on okay there. So that's what it looks like when it's put on. Now that's the normal flash hider. You also get a mock suppressor. It's just a clear nylon tube, as you can tell by looking straight down at there. Now all that does, it just threads onto the flash hider. So you need the flash hider on in order for this to work. You simply screw it on like any other thread and it just sits on there. Does absolutely nothing, but looks cool. If that's your sort of thing, then that's always an option. Like I said, it does come normal. Now, something to keep in mind, if you do take these off, the inner barrel itself stops about 5 centimeters into the outer barrel. The end of it is about there. It's about that far in. Something to keep in mind, especially if you do want to put like hole pups on, that sort of thing, you need to consider whether or not you need to shave the outer barrel down. If it's one that goes onto the inner barrel directly, you'll have to cut some of this off in order to make it work. Some on the outer barrel, you might have to be careful just on how it places so you don't accidentally misalign, hit the gels. But yeah, Moving further along, you do have a front iron sight, or in this case a nylon sight I suppose, which just flops up like that. Now, it is quite stiff, which is good, it means it's not going to jump up and down on you. It does clip back into place. Moving further along, you have the actual handguard or the wishbone right there. Now this does have a quad rail assembly on it, so you have 4 Picatinny rails, one on each side, one on the top and one on the bottom. Now the one on the top is a monolithic rail that goes from all the way from the front to the back of the receiver. I'll get onto that in a bit. The 2 side rails, they do look like they have some screws. You might be able to move them up and down, but they are only that long, so they're not actually all that big. Not too big a deal, but something to consider. The bottom is the entire length of the handguard, or wishbone, fishbone, whichever word you want to use to describe it. And it does come with this foregrip. Now that does come with the blaster standard, like I mentioned. And to just adjust it, you just need a firm grip and push it along. Something to keep in mind, it doesn't grip too tightly. So if you are using it like this and you have a little bit of exertion to your arm movements, you may actually run the risk of sliding it down. But in normal use, it's all right. Something else to keep in mind, it is just on the bottom rail section there that you can see. Now, I'll try and show you something which is a problem. If you look at that closely, that flexes a lot. Now that's not actually the foregrip flexing. What that is, that's the bottom of the rail where it joins onto the handguard flexing. So I wouldn't go putting too much strain on it left and right. And I would be careful about getting that caught and still moving, because you might actually end up ripping that handguard off. Something to just be aware of. It's still alright for what it is. If you move the handguard, the foregrip up to the end of the barrel where the screw is, it's a lot more stiff, and I would recommend that. You could move it further to magazine and get the same sort of thing. It's not as great because you can't move it all the way down to the back where the screw is, but still not a bad idea either way. It depends on what you find ergonomically comfortable. So for me, that's sort of ideal. Moving further along, like I mentioned before, the top rail is monolithic. It goes all the way from the front to the back and is not interrupted like it was in the AK-47. However, you do get this fake hollow sight with the blaster in the box. Now, I'll try and make it so you can see, but in the actual hollow itself, there's nothing there. It's just a clear piece of plastic. The buttons on the back, they're just for show. They're just molded plastic. It doesn't do anything. No batteries, nothing. So, personally, I probably wouldn't run that because I don't like the look of it, but to each their own. And you could use it to get a bit of an idea of where you're aiming. So, it's not all bad when you think about it. On the back, you do have a flip-up peep sight. Now this works in conjunction with the iron sight at the front. These two line up. Now, the peep sight itself is just a tiny little dot there. There it is there. Now, I would personally have it flip down like that. Again, these things aren't all that accurate, so there's no point having a peep sight in realistic use. So, other than that, if they're in the way and you don't like the look of them, you can just pop them down like so. Moving on to the main receiver itself, again, like I mentioned, the entire blaster is made of nylon, so it is quite sturdy and feels quite solid, and that's no exception from front to back. The receiver does have all of its pretty textures and whatnot. It has a bunch of engraved words and such, to make it look a bit more cool. The dust cover is spring-loaded. Now this one won't stay on. I'm assuming that that's just something I haven't been able to fix up. That's fine, something to think in mind. On the back here you do have the charging handle. Now there is a latch on this side, unlike the M4A1s where you can just pull them back. If you don't pull that latch back, it won't actually come back at all. So without the latch, it won't move, something to be aware of. And pulling that back will pre-feed the magazine. So this is another automatic mag-fed blaster. I'll get onto that shortly. Further down, on the right hand side, other than the dust cover, there's nothing other than this little button here, which is your magazine release. If you press that, it opens up a latch on this side, just there, and that allows the magazine to fall out. Again, I'll show you that when we get to the basic operations. Now on the left hand side, you do have what makes this blaster fairly unique. And that's this fire selector here. At least this is the control for it now. Currently where it's selected is safe or off. If you go down one click, there's a little image of what looks like one bullet. So I'll go down like that. And that's single shot fire, or single shot mode. If you click one over, just to the side there's a little pictogram of 3 bullets. Now that's the 3-round burst selection, is that setting right there. If you go all the way over like that, that means fully automatic. So that is quite good. Something to note, it's not ambidextrous, there's no fire selector on this side, it's molded in and it's molded differently on both sides. So yeah, just be aware of that. Further along, the trigger itself, it is quite solid, feels quite firm. It is plastic, so I know that some of the M4 style blasters have trigger issues, sometimes they break. I'm not sure on this one, it's fairly new, so we haven't really had the time to see if that's going to be the case, but something to keep in mind. Though, something to note is that the trigger actual response and reset is quite good, so I'll show you what I'm talking about there. So if you listen carefully, right there, fire, reset, fire, reset. So the response is almost exactly where the actual fire switch section is. Now there's about 1 centimeter of travel before you'll hit that contact, but then it's pretty good. Something to keep in mind. The pistol grip, it is molded and textured. It's not too bad for what it is. It does have a little lock just there for you to go between your fingers, and it feels fairly comfortable to hold in your hand. It feels fairly natural to hold that without too much drama. Moving further along to the back, you do have the buttstock. Now this is adjustable, like most M4 style buttstocks. You simply push that up, that moves the pin down, and allows you to adjust accordingly. Put it wherever setting you'd like, and that's fine. Something to keep in mind, the actual buttstock itself is the same nylon material as the rest of the blaster's body, but it is textured and it's quite aggressive texturing. So if you're only wearing t-shirts or maybe wearing a singlet and you're constantly doing this, especially during summer, that's going to get annoying. It's a personal preference thing, I guess, but something to be aware of. Now, if you take the buttstock fully off, there's your buffer tube, and this is actually where your battery is housed. You just push the little clip here on the side, and that whole side cover comes off, and there's your little connector in there in the main buffer tube itself. Once again, the buffer tube, fully nylon and fairly solid, so it's a good all-round feel. 2 more quick things before we move on to the basic operations of the blaster. One is the weight. Now, with all of the dressings and extra pieces attached, it's fairly light. Like, I could probably hold this with, a couple of fingers, not too much of a drama. Now, I don't want anything to fall off, but yeah, it weighs barely anything, maybe 1.5 kilos. I'm not sure exactly, of course, but that's not an issue. The biggest issue I could see with this, and you can probably tell if I just hold it like that, this blaster with all of its dressings is very long. Now, if I say had longer arms, so I extended this out a bit, this blaster is probably 1 meter or easily more longer, simply due to that extended outer barrel. Other than that, it's actually not too bad. So for me, preferentially, if I was to buy one of these and own it, I would want to cut this down quite a bit. I'd probably get a pop-up that fits onto the inner barrel, and then I'd make this work so that it would slot over. So just something to keep in mind, especially if you're running around in close quarter areas, like some of the fields, inside fields down in Brisbane. If you're running around like this, you've got a lot of barrel that can catch on obstacles that you're trying to swing around. It is going to make your maneuvering a little bit more cumbersome. Just something to keep in mind. So that's it for looking at the actual blaster itself. Now, let's have a look at how you operate the blaster, or the basic operation. First things first, we're going to do the battery. So if you take the stock off like so, take the battery cover off, you do expose the actual connection. Now, it is just your standard little black connection like so. Now, this is not the battery that came with it. This is another battery I had laying around that was fully charged. However, the battery you do get with it is a 7.4 volt battery, something to keep in mind. You can go to an 11.1 volt battery if you'd like to increase your fire rate, but we'll have a look at that towards the end. So that just slots in like so. It can be a little bit stiff and tricky to get it in, especially because that connection's right there. I have seen some people jamming the wires into the back of the receiver. I managed to slot in with the connection just there. And the benefit of doing so is that there's no actual movement of the battery if you were to shake the blaster, which is nice. So once that's in and connected, simply put the buttstock back on like so, and you're now ready to go. So if I click that onto single fire, again, single bullet symbol just there, it'll fire. Now, if you push it over into the 3-round burst, I can pull the trigger, and as soon as I hit that switch, I let it go, it'll still fire the 3 rounds. which is, again, the big selling point of this blaster being capable of doing so. And again, if you go to full auto, nothing special there. Moving on to the magazine. Now, like I said, this is an automatically feeding magazine. It does have a little motor in there, some wires and whatnot, so don't go tipping water through this, it's just going to cause issues. Not only that, but as you can see up the top, you do have your 2 contacts for the actual electric feed. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. There is also a tab here which pulls back the little catch in the feed tube just there, and that allows the gels to feed. So when that's in the blaster, that's pushed down, allows them to feed. But if you want to empty out at the end, you push that down, tip it up, and they'll all fall out. Just a great little thing to keep the maintenance. Now, in order to put the magazine in, you simply push it in like so, and then it's now in. Now, something to keep in mind, unlike the AK I did just before, and some others getting around, there's no flared mag well. It looks like there is from the molding just here, but there's actually not. So if I release the mag by again pressing that button, and if you have a look just there, there's no flares. Oh, there we go. It's quite solid. So in the heat of the moment, you might accidentally bump it a few times and have a bit of trouble getting it in there. Giggity. Something else to keep in mind on the magazine, if you look just there, you'll see 2 little gaps or holes, and that's where it actually, the catch on the mag release, hold it in. Now, this might trick you initially when you put it in, because you might only get the first one clicking, and you might think, oh, I'm ready to go. But if you pull the charge handle, nothing happens. It's not actually all the way in. So quick test, every time you put the magazine in, just slight bump and let it go. Once the second catch is put on, it's quite solid in there, so it's fairly good. Now, I have heard that this M4SS can actually use the drum mags that come with STD 5Ss and 5s and 6s, and also some of the M4A1 magazines crossover. It all depends on the shape on the back. So, for example, this one here, it does have a raised ridge just there that you can see. Now, if it does have that, then you'll be fine, but you need to be careful on the shape. If the shape is different, it won't work. And there are some examples of that, such as your Wells M401 magazines won't work with this because they have their own magazine design. To feed the magazine, or to refill the magazine, sorry, just on the back there, like most, there is the little door hatch there, and that opens up a hole for you to fill your gels. Now, I've already pre-filled this one. And again, pump it in, you'll hear 2 clicks. Just a quick little tap just to make sure, otherwise there's no guarantee the contacts are actually connecting. So in order to charge the magazine, something you do need to know, the fire selector cannot be in off. If it's in off and you pull the charging handle, it won't actually drive the motor or feed any gels. So make sure you're at the very least in single shot, and then pull back, and it's now fed. So keep that in mind there. Something else to note, I have heard there can be tricky issues sometimes with this charging handle not playing up now. I'm hoping that that's just people not realizing about the actual switch itself. But there was one event in the gameplay that you'll see later featuring Cody. This is his blaster. He was nice enough to let me utilize it for this. And what actually seemed to happen was, I'll just drop that there goes a few gels, that's fine. What actually happened was a bit of dirt and crap was getting up into the feed well, just running around and whatnot. And I've got a sneaking suspicion, because this mustn't sit completely flush, as you might expect, it's only a toy, that some of the dirt and grit, or even any busted gels or mashed gels, they might have actually gotten onto the contacts and they stopped it from charging. So I'm hoping that it's only something minor like that, in which case he took the magazine out, blew on it, cleared it out, because there was some mashed gels, so he might have just been using some couple of bad gels in the batch you loaded. He put it back in and it charged just fine. So something to keep in mind. So now that we've had a look at the blaster and how to basically operate it, let's do the chrono test.
As per usual, I'm using a 7.4 standard battery and hardened oranges.
So we seem to be getting consistently in the high 230s. Not a bad run for a standard. It's only really been used a couple of times for one day. So that's a single shot. We'll try flicking over to the 3-round burst and we'll see if that changes at all. Same same sort of deal. We do seem to be getting a little bit higher. It might just be that on the 3M burst it's actually able to wind the motor up a little bit faster. I don't know, and that's a complete guess. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on the matter. But around 240 feet per second with one outlier at 226, so that's not bad. So we'll flick it over to full auto just for scientific reasons and so we can get the fire rate. So yeah, we've got about 237 feet per second at the top there. That's, again, about the same as what we've been getting. So very good points for consistency. It seems to be only deviating rarely, and the deviation is only about 15 odd feet per second, which could be down to a number of factors, including the gels I'm using. There is the odd milky mixed in with this batch of gels, so it could be something there. So rate of fire, we seem to be getting around 31.9, so that'll be around 32 rounds per second. Not a bad rate of fire for a 7.4 volt battery. So what I might do now is I'll quickly chuck an 11 volt battery in, and we'll give it another crack just to see what it can do.
So with the 11 volt battery we seem to be topping out at about 51 rounds per second. Pretty good fire rate for a standard gun. Now let's have a look at the accuracy test. So that black area I was targeting is about 20 by 25 centimeters, and I was hitting fairly consistently. Let's try 15. So at 15 meters, we're still getting a fairly consistent targeting spread, but it is starting to show its distance, so let's try 20. So at 20 meters, I seem to be able to consistently hit the red facing of that box, and not only that, I'm not having to aim up a lot to lob the shot, so fairly good for a standard blaster. So ultimately the M4SS Blaster does seem to accurately and well semi-consistently hit a target. Now the black square you saw there was about 20 centimeters tall by 25 centimeters wide, and it was consistently hitting at close range. At long range I was able to semi-consistently hit the entire red box, which is quite large, but overall not a bad performance for a standard blaster. So yeah, it could definitely benefit from a hop-up like most of them, but pretty good out of the box performance.
So something a little bit different, I'm going to do a full auto test with a full magazine. So I've brimmed it, there's no spare space left. The magazine's feed line is already charged, so let's see how long this lasts. Keep in mind this is a 7.4 volt magazine battery. I'm not going to do a test on 11 volt, just what you actually get in the magazine itself. So let's see how long she lasts. Done.
So after the accuracy test and testing how long the magazine will last at full pelt, we're going to jump into some gameplay now. It was slowing down a little bit during that empty test. I'm assuming that was the battery I was using was starting to run out of charge. No way to guarantee that as of yet, but yeah, something to consider. I do think it was alright, and just the battery, not the blaster. So the gameplay footage you're about to look is from the perspective of Cody, like I mentioned earlier. This was his blaster and he lent it to me for this review, so the footage is from his perspective of a GoPro mounted on his head. Hope you enjoy, and hopefully this helps highlight how it'll play on the field.
Far left. Taliban win!
Did you like sprint and shoot him?
I did, I ran in and shot him.
Fuck, my legs are gonna kill me. Ah.
Hey!
Sorry, misfire.
Fuck off. It worked. No, hit the drums.
So a nice side effect here, even though he isn't able to hit the guy who is hiding behind that wall, because of the 3-round burst rate of fire, he is actually able to keep him suppressed and pinned, too afraid to put his head up in case he accidentally gets hit. Another nice little benefit of the fire select option. So in this game coming up, Cody started off as the initial infected, all on his own. Let's see how he goes.
Not again, not again, not again! What? Sorry! Hit!
So you can see Cody was able to make use of some of this blaster's unique capabilities quite well there, able to use some suppressive fire with a 3-round burst, but not actually completely draining his magazine quickly because it's not full auto, so there's some good little usage there. Not only that, he didn't use the flash hider and mock suppressor, which does help him in that little close quarters area that we actually have on that field. So, final thoughts on the M4SS Blaster. First, a lot of good about it. The full nylon body, it's quite strong. The fire select is such a great utility option. Not only that, it is a nylon gearbox and quite strong internals, so these things do seem to be able to take a little bit of punishment straight out of the box, which is nice. With all of its dressings, it's long. It's very long. Personally, I'm not a fan. Some people might like that, but I would cut that down and make it a bit more snubby, just to make life a bit easier for myself. Not only that, overall, the out-of-the-box chrono test is good. It's fairly consistent and roughly around the 235 to 240 mark with only a couple of outliers, and that could be down to a few different reasons, so I think it runs pretty well. Also, I would highly recommend getting a hop-up for it. The accuracy is fairly good out of the box, however, I would recommend a hop-up. Not only that, if you were to purchase this blaster, I'd highly recommend getting an extra 1 or 2 magazines to run around with, just so you can continue playing in the game without having to constantly stop. Now, I'm also of the opinion that you don't actually need an 11.1 volt battery. It runs really well on a 7.4, so if you don't want to, you don't necessarily have to in order to stay competitive. So yeah, overall I think it's definitely good value for money at the moment. A lot of the shops are selling them online. Obviously go to the proper stores that have been around for a while, and that way you won't get ripped off with the current news tax. But yeah, it's good. It's definitely worth your money. If you keep it clean, look after it, and just be aware of that magazine issue, sometimes with bad gels or dirt getting in it. I don't think you'll have any problems with this blaster for a long time. So those are my thoughts on the SKD M4SS Gel Blaster. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you liked the video, feel free to give it a like, give it a share, comment down below. I try to respond to as many comments as I can. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll catch you next time.